France and China, two of the world's greatest food cultures. But what if I told you they're actually way more alike than you'd think? In today's video, I'm going to be laying down 14 surprising reasons why the last 2 weeks of eating in France has me continually thinking about parallels with Chinese food.
Look, just hear me out. I'm not talking about taste. Obviously, the two cuisines taste completely different. But I think when it comes to food philosophy and also a lot of food techniques, there's a lot more similarities than differences between the two cuisines. And I feel like every French food that I'm eating here, I'm somehow finding links and similarities to food back that I'm tasting in China. Call me crazy, but I feel like by the end of today's video, you're going to be seeing the similarities too. And of course, not filming this video alone. Peter said he would meet me here at Passage de Panorama, and here he is here.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Ça va?
Très bien. Et toi?
Très bien, merci.
Oh, I'm becoming more French by the day.
Bien sûr.
Oh, and look, the arm grab. We are just so French right now.
So we're in the Passage. Passages are actually one of the first shopping malls in the world. And here we see a lot of foot traffic. It's actually very busy. Another secret is that the restaurants that you find in Passages are never gonna be bad.
Bonjour. On a réservé une table pour deux.
Pour deux personnes?
Pour deux personnes.
What's your name?
Peter.
Your French has been improving.
I mean, I've been here for 2 weeks. I thought it was about time I picked up my Rosetta Stone app, my handy anytime, anywhere language learning app, and actually start to learn a bit of French.
Rosetta Stone's amazing because it teaches through immersion and through exercise like repetition and matching speaker audio to visuals and reading stories. You'll be ready to immerse yourself into a new culture in record time.
And much like Mandarin, I feel like French is definitely one of those languages that it really matters how you pronounce something. So for that, I really love the pronunciation feature on Rosetta Stone.
Qu'est-ce que vous faites?
Qu'est-ce que vous faites?
If you'd like to learn more about Rosetta Stone and how you can get 60% off the lifetime subscription, which is going to give you access to every language the app offers for life, check out the link in my description and start getting immersed with Rosetta Stone. Anyway, let's get to eating, and I think you already know what we're here to try. Of course, frog legs.
First point I want to mention in this video is that both of these countries, France and China, both use more maybe untraditional proteins according to other countries when it comes to making their meals. I'm talking about rabbit or pigeon, even duck, frog of course, and snail.
We tried a snail the other day and then it was...
I've learned that here in France they really like to eat snails with baguette, and mine has a very convenient snail-sized hole in it, so voila.
It's good, isn't it? You can't really tell you're eating snail.
But that was never the goal for me. I actually found the bread a little distracting to the overall experience.
All I'm getting is a lot of garlic. I want to try another one but without the bread to get a feel for the actual taste.
This time I was able to taste beyond the garlic to the butteriness, as well as the slight bitterness coming from the pesto on there too, as well as appreciate the texture.
Texture is just like a chewy oyster. It kind of reminds me a little bit of seafood.
Abalone.
Yeah, a little
Reminds me of
abalone,
abalone
yeah.
texture.
I mean, I eat like river snails in China all the time. In so many different provinces, they feature it in the cuisine. Most notably in Guilin, when I was there in Yangshuo area. What they do is they take out the river snail meat, they mince it with all these other things, and then they reinsert it back into the snail, and then you eat it. It's so, so good. Like, the texture is just like that slightly chewy texture that contrasts well against other things in the dish. But we are here to try another untraditional protein, which is of course frog.
Today we've ordered frog legs prepared in the style of Provence, which is the area where France meets the Mediterranean.
I am so excited about this. I think I've told you this before, but frog would be in my top 3 favorite proteins of all time.
Really?
I love frog. I think it's so tender. It's like this mix of fish and chicken. I think it's so super underrated, and I feel like China definitely is one of the countries that celebrates how amazing frog can be.
In both cultures,
Yeah.
back in the days when they don't have access to better food products and stuff like that, we do eat this.
I have to say it's also feeling quite weird to be eating a frog leg with a fork. Definitely more of a subtle taste than the Chinese style of doing frog. So that's definitely different. And I also feel like you can taste the frog meat itself. Whereas I feel like in China when I've had frog before,
Yeah.
you could be eating anything really. This is much more delicate. It's slightly buttery. It's got a slight, I guess, tomatoiness to it. I've also put a little bit of lemon on it, so it's got a little bit of citrus as well. But under all that flavor, you can taste the frog itself, which I guess is kind of more similar to a Cantonese food philosophy where you don't mask the original ingredients with a lot of flavor. So I guess, yes, it's different in some ways to Chinese cuisine, but it's also similar.
Chinese cuisine in a lot of ways too.
Am I crazy, or is there actually quite some similarities between Chinese food and French food?
Well, of course you're not crazy. I do find a lot of similarities as
Okay.
well. Like the ability to turn humble ingredients into like amazing dishes.
Definitely noticed that, especially when we had our private chef experience in the castle. She used for like the entree just leek to create the most incredible elevated dish, and then for the main meal, parsnip. Like two ingredients I've never looked twice at were just elevated into the most beautiful dishes, and I feel like I definitely also see that kind of thing in Chinese food. The next point that I want to make of the similarity between French and Chinese food is that they both really value this nose to tail consumption, where the whole animal is used. There are not parts being wasted, because I'm often seeing on the menu here in France things like liver and kidney. I even saw calf head on the menu. Like all of these, you know, offal and maybe items that you wouldn't usually see on the menu in America or England or Australia are really being used, respected, and enjoyed here.
Both China and France, you know, back in the days, a lot of people are from like a poor economic stances, so they're not able to get like some good ingredients.
And this has resulted in both countries getting creative and making amazing dishes with more affordable cuts of meat.
Like you'll see it in Chongqing, like the people, the ordinary people and the working people weren't able to afford the steak cut of meat. And the only thing they had to work with was the intestine. So they made this Chongqing hot pot that was really spicy and flavorsome to mask the flavor of that offal. So finding a way to use that offal, the only thing they had access to, and make it into an incredible dish.
Right behind me, this is one of the biggest food store in Paris called the La Grande Épicerie. And follow me inside. I will show you the most iconic way French people use to eat offals.
Oh, okay. So you've taken me to the foie gras collection. So what exactly is foie gras?
Foie, this means liver, and gras, this means fat.
So basically fatty liver.
And it refers more specifically to the liver of a duck or goose.
Foie gras is actually one of the most enjoyed pâté in French culture.
And as you can see, there are not one, but 3 foie gras fridges displaying different varieties of foie gras.
And it's funny because it's like it's taking an offal but kind of transforming it into an ingredient that doesn't really look like offal. I think this is maybe a little bit of a difference between France and China in this way, because I feel like in China there's really no one is scared about just getting served a plate of tripe. Like, I mean, you've been to Beijing, you know, about bao du. But I feel like maybe in France, they're kind of transforming the offal to make it look like something completely different, so you're not reminded of what you're actually eating. I mean, we actually had sweetbread for the first time, and it's presented in such a way that you really wouldn't know that you're eating an offal of any variety. And I guess like foie gras, it just looks like a dip.
But of course, because it's a little bit too oily and heavy, people usually pair that with like jams or chutney.
Which really reminds me of how in China, duck is more often than not served with some kind of sweet sauce to cut through that greasiness. So hello, similarity number 6. Now all that's left is to buy some baguette to go with it.
And kind of on that point, what bread is to France, rice is to China. I mean, that carb that's used to mop up your juices of your meal at the end of your meal.
And here in France, they love their wheat products just like China loves their rice products. Peter took me to a boulangerie a few days ago where I tried palmier, as well as these cute little cannelés for the first time ever. And the cannelé really took me by surprise because it was so glutinous that I actually at first thought it was glutinous rice. What is this? Is it glutinous rice?
France are the masters of flour, like in China they're the masters of rice. They do everything with rice. In China, I feel like they do everything with flour here.
Well, I mean, the geography here is that we can grow wheat here, not rice. So French people, they have to go like all creative with like how they're using wheat, how they're using flours.
So hello, similarity number 8. Both countries have really gotten creative with their staple carbs.
Did you know that actually on Chinese social media, people are making fun of the baguette, saying that it is a weapon to hit people? But there is a distinction that I have to make. That is a baguette and a 3 days old baguette. A baguette is for you to eat, and then a 3 days old baguette is something as hard as if you can use it to hit a person.
So does that mean that here in France, once you know, if you don't use your baguette in the first day, that means it's pretty much not eaten, it's just wasted?
A 3-day-old baguette, French people still have like some creative ways of using it. They can either grind the baguette back into powder, so like flours, to reuse that flour.
To make a new baguette.
To make new bread or make something else. I mean, that's pretty much just like flour, and you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
B, actually they can cut those like 3 days old baguette into like pieces, and then coat them with like egg and flour, and
Like
stuff
French
like
toast.
that. They call it le pain perdu, but it's pretty much like the prototype of French toast. And C, a 3-day-old baguette can be used as croutons in soups.
We had the French onion soup the other day and there was like a piece of baguette inside that we also joked was actually kind of similar to the Chinese way of making a 羊肉泡馍. Peter, what are you doing?
Eating.
Alice was telling me that people in France will really not eat on the street. Like it's a faux pas to be eating anything or even drinking a coffee.
So the long story is that back in the days of Louis XIV, there are some kind of like social etiquette in France that everybody should follow. One of them is not to eat or drink while you're walking on the street.
Okay.
But this is one of the exceptions.
And so it's acceptable to take a nibble of the baguette butt in the street. That's fine.
Yes, and also people say that the best part of a baguette is actually the bum.
I agree.
So voila.
Well, while it might be okay to take a nibble of your baguette butt in public, I don't think it's appropriate to be layering on some foie gras and some fig chutney. So we're actually going to head back to the apartment.
Where we've got our fig jam, foie gras, and baguette ready to deploy.
Sorry to all my chef and baker friends. I know I don't have a bread knife here. This is the worst idea, but you know, necessity is the mother of invention.
Is there a story behind why a baguette is long? Like it's kind of a random piece of bread.
Actually, there is. So you can see that the baguette is like very long. So this facilitates the baking process and makes it like shorter than like a big loaf of bread. Back in the 1920s, French law actually prohibited any baking chef to work before 4 a.m. So that makes baking like a big loaf of bread in time for breakfast impossible.
So that's where the baguette comes from.
But voila.
I heard that the mark of a good baguette is inside it's chewy and soft and on the outside it's crunchy. Like you know in the movie Ratatouille when she's like, a mark of a good bread is not the taste, it's the crackle. Let's hear. Oh!
And do you know what happened to this?
T'as mangé le pignon.
Bah oui,
Le
c'est
pignon de la
moi.
baguette.
C'était moi.
Okay, now time to combine that bread with the foie gras.
Did you know that foie gras is really expensive? This cost like 20 euro and this was the cheapest one in the store.
Look at these prices. I mean, this is for a can of foie gras, of fatty liver. I'm talking 60 euros. That's like 100 Australian dollars.
And look how thin that is.
It's so small. Why is it so expensive?
It takes a lot of effort to make.
How do you make it?
Well, you've got to stuff a duck with food first.
What do you mean?
They stuff. Did you tell her the story of how they get foie gras? It's kind of
No, I didn't tell her. So
kind of not nice to ducks, but you tell her.
yeah, so basically you have to force feed a duck or a goose.
Yeah.
Why?
And then
To make it fat.
yes, it's actually a very cruel.
It's kind of cruel.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Workers insert pipes down the throats of male ducks twice each day, pumping up to 1 kilogram of grain fat into their stomachs. Or geese 3 times a day, up to 2 kilograms daily, in a process known as gavage.
So a thin liver just won't do?
Yeah, you need a fat liver.
But since this is a very important dish here in France and we've already opened the packet, let's honor that duck by enjoying it to the fullest.
So the first thing I do is I'm gonna make a tartine, like breaking my baguette into 2 halves. I take a small piece.
Oh, it's quite dense, isn't it? I should probably mention this is actually my first time trying foie gras.
Get some fig chutney.
We pay tribute to the duck and its fatty liver. It's really ducky.
It's made out of duck liver, so it's supposed to be ducky.
What's happening here in my palate, in the aftertaste, is the same aftertaste I get after I eat like, I don't know, roast duck or something like that. But it actually takes a while to actually get the taste of the duck because first thing I'm getting is the sweetness from that fig jam. So it adds that sweetness and it's good that we do have that because it is quite a rich taste, that pate. I don't know how much I'd be able to eat of it. I mean, it does taste really, really good.
I've never seen Peter walk so fast. He's absolutely zipping along here in the streets of Paris. We are slightly late for our appointment. It is 9:03. This place is so popular. It was the only time it had a reservation.
And at this restaurant, we are continuing on with the duck theme. This place is all about duck.
So here is the menu. It is so cute. It has a little duck on the front. And guys, literally the entire menu is duck.
So the reason I wanted to come here is to talk about this huge similarity between French and Chinese cuisine, which is the love of duck. I don't personally know another cuisine that features duck as heavily as these two cuisines, but let me know in the comments below if you do.
We have been debating for so long what we want to get, but I'm going to order
ordered this, the roasted duck breast, marguerite de canard. I've had this several times in Paris already, but I wanted to show it for this video. And then Alice is actually gonna go for the guinea fowl.
This animal kind of looks like a turkey.
Okay, so it's a kind of bird.
Should taste like chicken in theory.
If you're poultry and you're coming through France, fly quickly because they will eat you.
The other day I also had this amazing coq au vin, which also brought up another similarity between French and Chinese food, which is the use of alcohol during cooking.
So French people love to drink wine and cook with wine. Whether it's beef bourguignon or coq au vin, what they do is basically they are stewing it with a lot of wine. So in this case, red wine. And the wine makes the meat even more tender, juicy. It infuses it with more complex, sweet flavor. Chinese food actually uses a lot of wine as well.
Shaoxing wine is like one of your go-to ingredients.
Anyway, back to the duck. How incredible does this look? This is a marguerite de canard, basically a duck breast featuring a balsamic reduction sauce.
As you see, it's a whole duck breast that has the skin on, and below the skin is fat. And the reason they do that is they want that fattiness in the layer between the meat and the skin.
In French cuisine, you can be like all creative with your marguerite de canard. And actually, last time you had it was with like a mushroomy kind of sauce.
Yes, and let's see how it's cooked. Oh,
Oh la 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 la.
check that out.
That is very well cooked. That is delicious.
Yeah?
Oh, it's so good.
Incroyable.
It's cooked to absolute perfection, and that balsamic reduction sauce was actually so sweet, which perfectly cut through the richness of the duck. Again, making me think about how China likes to pair duck with sweet flavors. Now time to try guinea fowl for the first time. Okay, so I need to mention it here. A major difference between poultry in China and poultry in France is in China you'd rarely see the duck or poultry served like this, as a chunk of breast meat, without bones, at least somewhere close by. As a result, I found the guinea fowl a little bit too dry for my taste, but whatever they did to this duck breast worked perfectly because it was so juicy and flavorful, and also went really, really well with the mashed potato, which again reminded me of rice. Can we call this similarity number 12?
What about you guys? Do you have any last closing remarks, any last final similarities between French and Chinese cuisine?
Another kind of similarity that I really found was the use of mold in both cuisine. As we know, cheese is something that is like fermented, and then sometimes there will be mold involved. And in China, actually you have tried it as well. You have tried the Mao Doufu in Anhui.
The reason for this hair here is because of the fermentation process. That's actually mold, so it's fermented for long enough until it starts actually sprouting hairs from the tofu, but I've been told this mold is actually edible and the resulting dish is actually quite tasty.
One thing that comes to mind, I know this is very niche, but these cultures both have an intellectual approach to food on top of a technical approach. So in China you have the great philosopher and scholar Su who designed the recipe for ro, which is a very famous Chinese dish among many others. And in France you have a guy called Jean-Pierre Savarin who wrote La physiologie du goût, one of the hallmark texts about the science of cooking and of taste. To my mind, it seems like both cultures have a really deep technical and intellectual understanding of food.
On that note, I think we have officially exhausted every single similarity between these two cuisines, but it has been so much fun doing it with you guys today, so thank you as always for joining me. Don't forget to follow Alice and Peter on their respective social medias, and while you're at it, why not press subscribe here on my social media. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Are there a lot of similarities between French and Chinese cuisine? Am I going crazy? Is Chinese cuisine just taking over my brain? That's also a possibility too. In any case, it has been a lot of fun making this video with you guys. I will see you back in China next week on my channel. Santé! Bye guys!